Welcome to Dino Park Media. My name is Samuel, and today is the day that we're going to be releasing our first episode of 2023. And with me today, we have Cinematic Fantastic, otherwise known as Noah. Noah, why don't you go ahead and say hello to everybody?
Hello, everyone. Hope all you Jurassic fans out there are doing good, and Happy New Year. And look forward to talking about this. So, thank you, Sam, for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, listen, I knew that you were the guy that needed to come on here, but for those who don't know, Noah has been on the channel before, but he hasn't been on since changing his name from Cinematic Fantastic. From Jurassic Fantastic to Cinematic Fantastic. And so I knew I wanted to have your perspective on this anyway, but especially since the name change, because you just have such a deep knowledge of movies and cinema in general, and also box office numbers, which is very helpful for today's conversation. But with that, you also have a specific appreciation for Jurassic Park, and I just knew that you were the guy that needed to be on here. So Noah, once again, thanks again for being on.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that, we wanted to jump right into the topic that we have for today, which is 2023 marks the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park, the original movie. And of course, the actual anniversary isn't until June, but just because, the Jurassic fans, we all like to have our 1 year anniversaries, our year anniversary, so the whole year long. And so we're starting off 2023 as the 30th anniversary for Jurassic Park. And with that, it's kind of an interesting year because it's also the year after Jurassic World Dominion came out. And Noah, you and I were discussing it a little bit beforehand. There's definitely this different feeling in the air going into the 30th anniversary compared to past anniversaries, like just recently with being the 25th anniversary of the Lost World Jurassic Park, but then also in 2018, it was the 25th anniversary of Jurassic Park, the original movie 5 years ago.
Right.
And there was tons of excitement going into that year. That was actually the year
Oh,
that
yeah.
reignited my passion. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I remember like the 25th anniversary for in 2018. That was huge. Like, I was the most excited I had seen the Jurassic fandom in quite a while, maybe even more so than when Jurassic World was coming out. Like, it was huge
Hmm.
because not only was it the 25th anniversary, but you had Fallen Kingdom coming out, and everybody was excited about that. So, and we knew that a third movie was on the way that was going to be like the big culmination. So, yeah, there was a lot of excitement for the 25th anniversary. It definitely feels a little different now. I'll say that.
Yes, and I completely agree. I mean, because also not only does it seem like we're in a little bit more of an ambiguous time with the Jurassic franchise that we're going to be going into more in a little bit, but also it just doesn't seem that there's as much going on with the franchise or even like just more of the fandom. Specifically, what I mean by that is in 2018, we had a movie coming out. That was actually the year that Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom came out, and so
Yeah.
there was a movie. There was a movie release. It was the 25th anniversary. There was an announcement that the Universal Studios in Hollywood was going to be closing down Jurassic Park the ride in order to redo the whole ride experience at the end of the summer. They're going to close it down in order to redo it into Jurassic World, and so there's all this excitement. Everybody's like, "Oh, I want to ride it for the last time over in Hollywood." For me personally, that was actually how I got to go to Universal Studios in Florida for the first time because I was like, "Yeah, it's closing down in Hollywood, but what if it closes down in Florida? I might not ever get to go on the original Jurassic Park ride, whether it be from Hollywood or
Well, and
the one in Florida." So I was like, "I gotta
well,
go."
and I always am thankful. I was fortunate enough to ride the original Jurassic Park ride at Hollywood before it got revamped. So I'm always going to be thankful that I got to experience it before they revamped it. But I'm looking forward to going back someday and riding the new one because I still haven't yet.
Yes. And see, I want to do that too. I want to go to California and ride that one. I know that Matt, he's ridden it and he says it's great. He sent me pictures. And I'm like, dang it, I wish I could go on that. But yeah, I'm with you. So like, also, it's really cool that you got to ride the original Hollywood ride before they actually redid it. That's actually really cool too. I wasn't
Yeah.
able to go on the Hollywood one. I was just able to go on the River Adventure in Orlando, um but that all that to say, there just seems to be a different air in the Jurassic community going into the 30th anniversary versus the 25th. And so let's go ahead and kind of explore that a little bit more with our first question to kind of like give us a little more direction here. Is there still excitement around the Jurassic brand at all anymore? I mean, I think that's actually kind of maybe a little bit too broad of a question because it makes it just more of a yes or a no. And the answer is yes. But to be a little more pointed, um, is there an overwhelming excitement in the Jurassic franchise? Because before the excitement also came with a lot of anticipation for future stuff. But
Right.
now that Dominion's come out, the Jurassic World trilogy is wrapped up, and Camp Cretaceous is supposedly over. I mean, they could resurrect that at any point, I guess. I hope not, but then the hot take, but I don't like let it be. Let it be. But
Yeah.
also like other projects, like people have already said, like, hey, there's gonna be more stuff in the future, like unofficially said. But I'm just like,
Mhm.
yeah, where's the excitement in the franchise right now? Is it pure nostalgia? What do you think there, Noah?
I That's a good question because I think that amongst the Jurassic community, you have fans who are different, who are excited for different things. Like you have some who are really anticipating the new toy lines, and you have the community that's a portion of the community that's really involved with Jurassic World Evolution 2 and all the updates for that. But in terms of like a film or something that is going to universally anticipate, get the fandom really hyped and anticipated. I don't think that's really there at the moment. I don't see it.
Mhm.
I know for a fact. I don't even need them to say. So I just know they're going to make more movies, whether I want them to or not. But when that is, I really have no idea. I don't think anybody does. But
Mhm.
it seems to be to me not to be as much hype, but more just a sense of uncertainty about the future of the franchise. And I think the fandom is just sort of in this sort of limbo stage now,
Mhm.
especially after Dominion, which left a lot of people questioning if the franchise should even continue or not. So,
Oh, seriously. I mean,
mhm.
yes, I'm with you on that. And let's actually explore Jurassic World Dominion for a little bit because I think that that is probably the biggest piece of where we are right now as
It's
a
the big elephant in the room for
y-
sure.
yes, because honestly, there are lots of people out there that love this movie, and I don't want to take that from them, right?
No,
I
not
don't
at
want
all.
to sit here and be a dingus and go like, okay, you know what? If you like this movie, you obviously have no taste in movies. Like that's not it at all. It's obviously subjective, but for I know that
A
you and
good
I share a
portion
lot
of
of
the
things.
fandom does not like it. Like,
Yes.
I know for a fact Clayton Fiordi was not the biggest fan of it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, Clayton was not a big fan of it either, and honestly, I do believe that there is a portion, because I've seen a lot of posts on Facebook and on Instagram. I don't really follow a lot of forums like Reddit or anything, but specifically Facebook and Instagram, and then seeing the comment section talk about people built this movie up to be so big and had their personal expectations of what they wanted from the movie that when they didn't get it, it was the biggest letdown. And
oh,
I
I
think
know.
that
I'm guilty of that.
yeah.
I fully admit I was one of those people. If you're someone watching this who had been following me for like the past 2 or 3 years as Jurassic Fantastic, you'll know I hyped this movie up to death on my page. Like I was so excited for it. And so I'm fully guilty of being one of those people. But even if my expectations hadn't been as high as they were, I still don't think I would have liked this movie.
Yeah, I agree with with that statement that you just made. Not because of what you were saying specifically about the movie, because I think everybody had their personal like checklist of I need this, I need this, I need this, and obviously nobody's going to get
Mm-hmm.
everything that they want. But for me specifically, I also had certain checklists. I was hoping, and I know this is going to sound terrible, but I was hoping that one of the legacy characters would have a sacrificial death. so that it wouldn't just
Right.
be like, oh, they just got clamped by the Tyrannosaurus Rex and that was it. Like, no, no, no. I specifically wanted Ian Malcolm to be the pseudo antagonist, meaning that he hated the ideas hated the idea of dinosaurs being out in the wild so much that he helped like lead would help lead a an organization to like kill them, just like go out there and just like take out dinosaurs specifically in order to be able to save the current ecosystem that we have in the world of just humans and current current modern day animals, like this current dichotomy that we have. Throw in
Yeah.
dinosaurs and everything gets thrown off. Like he wanted to destroy all the dinosaurs, but then at the end there would be like one scenario where like maybe the Giganotosaurus was about to kill Rexy or something like that, and then or kill the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the classic one, and then he ends up like seeing the Rex, and then he's just like there would be something within him that would just go like okay, and then he like pulls out a flare again or whatever, and then gets the Giganotosaurus's attention, but then all of a sudden just it kills him or something like that in some sort of sacrificial. And that was kind of like more of a meh thing. That was actually originally anticipating like him like trying to save Ellie or Dr. Grant
Hmm.
through some sort of sacrifice like that, and then he would die in the process. I was hoping that something big would happen like that because there it would be something of
Hmm.
note, and then Jurassic World Dominion comes out, and then none of all the legacy characters live because, of course, like quote unquote, they have to. I've heard that from some people, and I'm like,
The stakes in the film overall just didn't seem to be that high. Like I
right,
didn't feel a sense of danger or fear anyone was going to die at all in that movie. Really.
yes, and I agree. I will say, specifically going back to Dr. Malcolm, I thought when Ian had the flaming cockroach, not cockroach, locust. I'm don't get me started on the locust. He had a flaming
Oh
locust
gosh, yeah,
on the end of a pike, right? And then he's like
yeah.
going back and forth trying to distract the Giganotosaurus. I thought that, I thought that was the moment that
I'm
he
with
was
you. I
gonna
was like, okay, this is the moment where he's
yep.
gonna bite the dust, go out like a hero.
I was
But
really,
nope.
but no, he didn't. He lived, and then he also. I mean, it was kind of cool that he speared the spear straight into the mouth of the Giga. I thought that was pretty cool. But other than that, like, it was laughably bad in some scenarios, and so
Well, and I've heard some people admit to me, they acknowledge the movie is bad, but because it has dinosaurs in it, they say they enjoy it. And I'm like, okay, I definitely get that standard, but even
yeah,
on that level, the film didn't work for me because the dinosaurs weren't even the central focus of the plot. Like,
right. I 100% agree with you. In fact, um, there were animals that were at the center of the plot, but it
oh
wasn't
yeah.
it was those stupid insects. It was locusts, and so,
I mean,
um,
say what you want about Jurassic Park 3, but at least the dinosaurs were the focus and felt like an ever-present threat in the movie. So,
exactly. No, no, for real. Like
yeah.
everything. Oh, man, you're on fire with these good takes. But like, I completely agree with you. The stakes were just down, and this isn't supposed to turn into a video of us just pooping on Dominion the entire time, but it
But I
is
feel like it's
indicative.
important to talk about it in order to provide context for where the franchise is now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I definitely think that there are plenty of other fans out there like us that are showing this distaste for what Dominion did, and then it's indicative of where the franchise, or sorry, where the community is as a whole. And so,
Right.
um, I mean, it's obviously it's early. It's January right now of 2023 that we're going into the year. I'm sure that Universal's over there probably like planning some sort of reveal. I'm hoping that Universal Studios Orlando, they like to have these tribute stores every year. I'm hoping that they're going to have some
Hmm.
sort of like at least a portion of the store, tribute store mentioning the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park. I think that would
Oh,
just
I sure hope so. Yeah, that'd be cool.
it'd be an easy win for them, right? But
Right. It
but
would
all
definitely appeal more to the older fans that grew up with the original three films for sure.
absolutely.
Like
I mean,
play you that's a good example of playing on nostalgia right there.
right, and that actually kind of takes me into the next little subtopic here of is nostalgia the one thing that's going to be carrying this franchise forward,
Oh,
or
absolutely.
oh you okay? So you
Absolutely.
do think it's
Yeah.
nostalgia? Okay, so go ahead.
Hmm.
Tell me more about why nostalgia is the thing that's going to be like propelling the franchise forward.
Well, because the reason I say that is because I know that we talked about this in another video about where the franchise or things they could do going forward. I don't think that you can take this franchise in any forward directions anymore. I just
Mm,
creatively don't see any way to do that. So if you're going to get the fans hyped up again for something, I feel like you have to go back rather than
hmm.
forward. Do something in between the films, or maybe before Jurassic Park, like the construction of the park on Nublar, or the Amalga testing on Site B, something to play on the nostalgia of people who grew up with the original Park trilogy. I
Yes.
really think that if you want to get the fans hyped again, nostalgia really, for better or worse, depending on how you look at it, is really the only way to keep the franchise going forward, I think, at least for now. So,
Yeah, I have to agree. And like I did talk with somebody 2 years ago. Man, I can't believe it's been that long. Back in 2021 about specifically like what he described as the neo Jurassic age. And I thought that was super interesting to be explored, that, like showing what dinosaurs basically he described it in certain aspects as like a Nat Geo experience of like showing off dinosaurs in the modern day natural habitats, if you will. And
mhm.
I'm not necessarily on board for like a Nat Geo experience, but I would definitely like to see how dinosaurs can like coexist with humans as far as well, as far as what we were hoping to see in Dominion, as far
Yeah,
as
I
like,
was about to say that
yeah,
that was the
why.
film where we should have gotten that, but
Right. And honestly, I think part of the reason that it ended so ambiguously as it did is because of the fact that they wanted to open it up to, for some reason, they thought that was the best way of opening it up to splintering off the story and then having spin offs of what I'm kind of explaining right now, this Neo Jurassic age, by
right.
allowing the dinosaurs to be free out in the wild. But I mean, Battle at Big Rock, right? That short
Hmm.
film was interesting because it was showing how you can't just throw dinosaurs into the mix willing like all of a sudden and then expect humanity, modern day animals and then dinosaurs just all of a sudden to coexist. Obviously there's going to be a
Well,
huge like show of like difference between these different
yeah.
types of species and beings.
Well, and Clayton Fiordi, he brought up a good point in one of his videos on the topic. A good point he made in one of his videos was that the whole idea of coexistence that Dominion was pushing, it kind of goes against what the previous five films had been all about and built up to, including Battle of Big Rock, was that humans and dinosaurs can't coexist.
Right.
It's just not possible. So that's why I feel like you can't really go anywhere with this anymore, because Dominion ended with coexistence and we're all living happily ever after. So it's like it just completely goes against what Jurassic Park stood for to begin with, in my opinion.
I I completely agree. I completely agree. I because like I'm with the guy that I talked to back in 2021 about like seeing, wanting to see the Neo Jurassic Age and how it would play out, but uh, but as far as being on brand with Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, what we've seen before Dominion, I do agree with you that it it definitely is subverting what the original intention of the whole moral of the story was to be about. Humans and dinosaurs can't coexist, but when it comes to Dominion, though, here's a big thing that a lot of people like to make a statement about, and this is actually why I really thought that your voice specifically would be really good to talk about this. Um, Dominion made over $1 billion at the box office last year.
Hmm.
So
Granted, just barely, and it took its
yes,
entire theatrical run to get there.
right. Wasn't there even like a brief re-release for a moment, or am I
There,
dreaming that?
there, there might have been. I'm not entirely sure. They may have released the extended edition in theaters for like a couple of weeks. I'm not sure, but that could have happened. I don't know.
Okay, but either way, like you said, it was barely breaking 1 billion, which is both a good a good thing, a feather in your cap if you're Universal. Like, hey, we made $1 billion this year, post
But
pandemic.
you and I both know that they were expecting far more than just barely breaking a billion. Like, I know for a fact that with bringing the original cast back, they were
Yeah,
definitely expecting more than that.
right. So I mean, I think that they were hoping, but they also were like cautious because of the fact that like they had a fall with the pandemic if like
Right.
it didn't make a billion. But obviously, if it didn't make a billion, I think that it would be easier for Universal to go like maybe we do need to put this to rest. But the fact that it made a billion, and
Hmm.
like you said, just over, but still, it that you can't ignore the bill.
No,
Um,
you can't,
no,
unfortunately.
so where do you think Universal's gonna take that then going into the future?
Oh well,
Because
I
sorry, because it made $1 billion, Universal is definitely going to do something with the with Jurassic franchise moving forward.
oh
They're
absolutely.
betting big. They're betting big money on the Jurassic franchise, which I'm glad to see. I just don't know if it's in the right direction. Like they made the Velocicoaster, that was good. They did a lot to reinvigorate the Islands of Adventure Park at Universal in Orlando. That was good. But then also now you have Dominion, you have Camp Cretaceous, these projects that I
Hmm.
was not a big fan of, and it seems like they're
Right.
pouring their money into. So, but obviously, it seems like with that $1 billion, it seems like it's supposed to be a success. So, where do you see Universal going forward now? Do you think that they're going to continue banking on Dominion, or do you think that there was enough critical critical disdain in order for them to kind of reevaluate Jurassic franchise?
Well, call me a cynic, but when a movie that doesn't get a good reception still becomes a box office success, from my experience, Hollywood doesn't really care what the reviews are. The movie made money, and money talks. And so I think that they are going to continue with uh, going forward post Dominion. I don't think that they're going to do what I want to do, which is go back. I think that they're going to continue to try to push this in different avenues with different spin-offs and things like that. That's not necessarily what I think they should do, but just knowing how Hollywood's mindset tends to work. When they see that $1 billion, they're going to think these films don't have to be great as long as they continue to get butts in the seats and crack a billion. So,
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's what I see them going forward with.
Yeah, and I think that you are making a good point. Um, but another question to ask then would be, or another point to make specifically in this vein is that Star Wars, the one of the three biggest franchises, in my opinion, I think I could be wrong, but it seems seemingly one of the three biggest franchises in the world, has not made a movie since Rise of Skywalker in 2019.
Mm-mm.
And they literally like reports are saying from Hollywood that they literally put movies on ice, including the Rogue Squadron movie that they were supposed to make with I can't remember her name, the lady who directed the Wonder Woman.
Oh, Patty Jenkins.
Thank you. Yes. So Patty Jenkins was supposed to direct this Rogue Squadron film, but that's put on ice, right? And so,
Right.
like, if something as big as Star Wars can freeze their cinematic releases anyway, because obviously we have plenty of Disney Plus material out there. Maybe that's maybe okay. Maybe I just answered my question. Maybe they had their outlet for being able to get Star Wars out and still find success without having to put all the millions of dollars into a cinema release, a theatrical release. But do you think that Universal might look at Jurassic in the same way, where they go like, okay, listen, yes, it made its billion, but barely, and there was this distaste for the movie. Do you think that that could force them to do maybe even other projects, such as putting Jurassic on streaming, such as like a streaming show or a miniseries or something like that?
It's possible. I mean, I would hope that they would take a good look at the reception to Dominion and see that yes, there were people who liked it, but I think the majority of fans and it seems general audiences were moviegoers were not a big fan of the movie
Hmm.
and question, the creative direction for the franchise. First of all, and I mean no disrespect here, but if you are going to go for it, I think the first thing they need to do is take a hard look at what's the common denominator in all the bad reception to these three films. And I really think, and again, no disrespect against the man personally, but I think they need to decide Colin Trevorrow should not continue to be a creative part of the franchise.
Hmm.
And I know he's a great guy, and I believe him when he says that he is a fan of this franchise. But I think if I was there, I would take a hard look at that and say, okay, if we're going to go forward, he cannot stay. Like we need to get either David Kett back in there or Joe Johnston or heck, even give J.A. Bayona full creative control this time. If you're going to go forward, you need to get somebody who creatively is going to be right in taking this franchise in a good direction quality wise. And I just don't think Trevorrow's that person. So that's
Hmm.
the first thing I would do is if you're going to go forward is take a look at and see, okay, who can we get to save this? Who can we get to salvage this and take us in bigger and better directions?
That is a hot take. That is
Yeah,
definitely.
that is.
I see where you're coming from though, because I mean, Colin Trevorrow. I don't know about J.A. Bayona because of the fact that number one, obviously, I know that Colin Trevorrow was heavily involved with the writing and the producing of. Did he produce Fallen Kingdom?
I believe he produced. I know for a fact he was the writer on the film, and most of the complaints people have with that film is because of his writing, not Bayona's direction.
Right.
And I believe he was a producer on it as well. I could be wrong about that, but I think he was.
Right, and the thing is, there was moments in that movie that I really like. So I can't hang everything on Bayona for Fallen Kingdom, but still, he was the director for it, and I wasn't a huge fan of that film. Dominion,
Right.
I had more issues with, but you know, whatever. But also more recently, Rings of Power, Bayona had a lot of involvement with that, with directing certain episodes, and
Right.
I was that's a whole different conversation. But I was not a fan of
I didn't. I
Rings of
didn't
Power.
even bother with it. So
You made a
I did
very
not
wise
waste
decision,
my
my
time.
friend. You made
I
a
was like,
very wise decision.
I'm just gonna stick with House of the Dragon. So
Yep, no, you made a very good decision. I watched all the episodes hoping, praying against hope that, there would be something good that would come from it, and they found a way to disappoint me every single episode. But that's besides the point. Once again, it's
yeah,
besides the point.
I guess I'm a little more forgiving on Bayona because one, Dominion actually made me appreciate Fallen Kingdom a whole lot more,
Sure.
ironically,
Mhm.
and two, I appreciated that he was trying to take the franchise, and this is a bigger question about if the franchise goes forward, where they should take it. He was trying to get it, I think, back in that darker direction that films like The Lost World were going for, and I really think we should go back to that as well in terms of tone because Dominion's a quite frankly a really silly movie.
I completely
So
agree. And with that, so let's riff on that for a moment. Do you think that if because I've seen these comments on Facebook and Instagram once again, like there's people that are showing a demand for this. Do you believe that going back to a horror centric aspect of the franchise that was definitely uh, more readily seen in the first and I would even say more so in the second movie, The Lost
oh,
World, Jurassic
absolutely.
Park,
That's still the
um,
darkest movie of the franchise, I would say. So
both literally and
and
yeah,
figuratively.
figuratively in the sense that like literally it's just like night for like 30 like 70% of the movie, but whatever. But do you think that horror is the thing that will pull people back to the Jurassic franchise?
100% yes. At least older fans, because I think something that the younger fans potentially listen to this need to keep in mind is, I'm almost 25. I grew up with that original trilogy. I grew up with that more grounded sci-fi tone that Spielberg and Johnston were trying to push with their first three movies. Whereas the newer trilogy, people who grew up with that, they're accustomed to that sort of tone and I hate to say this, but that's really what it is. This more Fast and Furious esque bombastic action
Mm,
that the Jurassic World trilogy took. So I think that if you want to get more of the older fans back, because I think the majority of older fans were the ones who didn't like Dominion.
yeah.
Not everyone, of course, but if you want to get those back, you really do have to. I think it would be wise to go back to that darker, more horror esque direction that films like The Lost World and, like I said, even Fallen Kingdom to an extent was trying to push. So
I agree with you. I think that there are aspects of that still need to be brought forward and maybe even made paramount compared to the wonder part. Um, but I think that uh, especially in Dominion, the wonder state, the sense of wonder and the desire for and the desire for nostalgia baiting was paramount before these senses of horror, and then throw in like what's hot with Hollywood, like you said, the Fast and Furious esque feelings
Yeah, whenever
of
people joke
action.
about that, whenever people joke about that Fast and Furious crossover, I'm like, after seeing Dominion, I wouldn't be surprised if they did that
That's right, and then
because
even then,
it really doesn't seem that far off now. Like,
no, no, Dom's gonna come in and then with his shotgun he go and he's just like for family and then runs at the T-Rex. Yeah, like
yep,
that's literally what's gonna be happening. But um yeah, no, I think that excitement will come from horror. Obviously, like um and this is where I differ from you a little bit. I don't think that horror 100% is going to be the thing that brings like excitement back to the franchise for everyone, but I do believe that especially like what you said, the older generation, that is key. They're going to be coming back for the horror because a lot of people have grown up anyway. So if they're growing up
right.
and the horror aspects are going to be a little bit more available to them. But with that being said, let's go into our next question though. And because I think that bringing it back to 2023, back to the 30th anniversary of Jurassic Park, the original OG movie, will the 30th anniversary garnish as much community involvement as the 25th did? We touched on this a little bit so far with different aspects, maybe like Universal in Orlando doing a tribute store and such. But like, do you think that the community can get just as excited about the 30th anniversary as it did about the 25th?
I would certainly like for that to happen, but again, given the state many fans feel with the bad taste of Dominion in their mouth, I really don't know. I think that if they play heavily on the nostalgic love people have for the original, and this was the thing that started it all for many people, even those who hadn't read the books, this was the beginning. So I think if they play that angle, you can definitely get fans excited. If you emphasize the Jurassic Park aesthetic of things, especially in Jurassic June, I think that would help because the original film is universally loved. So if anything's going to unite the fans in excitement, it's celebrating the 30th anniversary of the original. So I certainly hope that that is the case. But given the state many fans feel after the most recent movie, I'm really not sure. But I would certainly hope that it would at least be on the same level of engagement and excitement that the 25th anniversary was.
And me too. I honestly think that that bar is set really really high for well, the every 5 year anniversaries. The 25th was just for me specifically so magical because of that year I was like, yo, I want to go on the Jurassic World, sorry, the Jurassic Park River Adventure in Orlando. So you know what? I'm ding dang gonna do it. And then basically I asked a bunch of my friends. I was like, hey, do you have a thirst for adventure and an extra $1,000 lying around? Is literally how I would call them on my phone and I asked like 3 or 4 friends before getting to one guy that's like, let me talk to my wife and I'll get back to you. And then like they had literally just gotten married, and then it was Charles, and then he calls me, he texts me, he's like, yeah, is that trip still available? And I was like, call me. And then we had a conversation. I was just like, are you serious? He's like, you know what? My wife says like I should do this, and I'm like, I got the money, so let's do it. And we had seriously one of the greatest vacations I've ever had. One of the most fun getaways I've ever had. We both got to hang out together, got to go on all the rides, and I, I think that man, for me personally, and this shows how like important nostalgia is, right? The 25th
Mhm.
anniversary will be probably the best anniversary of the Jurassic Park franchise in my memory. But you mentioned earlier if they probably meaning Universal really riff on people's nostalgia and their love of the franchise for the 30th anniversary, what would they need to do? What are some examples of what Universal could do in order to make the 30th anniversary really exciting?
Well, I was saying earlier, like emphasize the Jurassic Park aesthetic because
Ooh.
uh, every film in the franchise, particularly like the original, the first Lost World and Jurassic World, I would say those films sort of have their own style and aesthetic. And I feel like if in like stores, for example, or uh, food restaurants at Universal, or make it Jurassic Park themed, kind of like the DLC Return to the Jurassic Park for Jurassic World Evolution.
Mm.
Emphasize the original film. Give it a 1993 style vibe with the shops and everything to really give us the classic dull brown colored dinosaurs walking around, like everything that we associate with that first film. They should try to emphasize in the aesthetics of the park. I think would be a really great way to celebrate the 30th anniversary of, in my opinion, the greatest movie ever made. So
Ooh, I like the sound of that, and I'm with you on that. The greatest movie ever made. And I completely agree that the Jurassic World aesthetic needs to be brought front and center. Are you speaking specifically for the theme parks, or what other ways could it be implemented? Like maybe they're like, could you see a new special edition? Maybe because I mean they've already done the Blu-ray release, excuse me, and then they did the 4K Blu-ray release. Do you think that they would do like a new release for maybe like all 6 films of the saga in the special edition Jurassic Park aesthetic?
that would be really cool. If you're gonna make me as someone who collects Blu-rays, if you really want to make a special Jurassic Park special edition, give me a Jurassic Park commentary track, because I think it's a darn shame that as someone who loves listening to commentaries, we only have one film in this 6 film franchise that has a commentary track, and that's Jurassic Park 3. I would just love to watch the original film with with a commentary from the people who made it. I know Spielberg doesn't really do commentaries for his movies, but there are other people just as important who worked on that original film that I'd love to hear their take on the making of that movie. So that would be a really special re-release. But yeah, like if you want to up the quality of the sound or picture, I'm always for special edition re-releases like that. So anything to do. The toy line, I know that I'm not necessarily a toy collector, but I know toy collecting is a very big part of the Jurassic franchise.
Mm.
Maybe do some nostalgia and re-release some toys from the original Jurassic Park toy line, or
Oh, dude.
emphasize toys that are styled off the dinosaurs from the original film. Like anything to remind people that, hey, it's the 30th anniversary of this movie. It doesn't matter where it is. Just emphasize that. I think will help uh, get the message across that we're celebrating the 30th anniversary.
Man, I like the way I like the way that you're going here, especially with that toy line of going back to some of the original figures. If you know, please enlighten me. The original figures that they had, I forget what company made them. Because I know it
I
had.
believe it was Kenner. I could be wrong,
Okay,
but I think it was Kenner. Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say too, but I was really scared of being wrong.
Yeah,
um,
I am for sure not a Jurassic toy expert, but I know there are plenty are, and there's probably some that are going to type in the comments what it is. But I'm 99% sure it's Kenner.
I think that you're right too. And man, like okay, so because I know that Mattel and Hasbro have this vicious rivalry, and which I mean, understandable. They're 2 of the biggest toy brands out there, but the fact that Mattel was able to get the contract for the toys after Hasbro failed so miserably with Jurassic World is obviously probably a point of contention between those 2 companies. But um,
Yeah.
if it's Kenner though, like yeah, I think a re if Mattel was able to get the rights to do the re-releases of those Kenner toys, I think you're right. That would be an easy cash grab based upon
Well,
nostalgia.
because because I know that Star Wars has done that. They've released some of the old Kenner toys in the original packaging before, so that'd be a great way to play on nostalgia, especially for the big serious toy collectors out there. So
Absolutely. I mean, listen, with how many people I've seen on online talk about the Red Rex with like this huge like sense of like nostalgia and kid like wonder. I think the Red Rex was actually a Lost World toy, wasn't it, or was it original JP toy?
no, it was an original JP toy. The Lost World toy line, that was the one that had the bull Rex who roared, and then the Thrasher one. The Red
Okay,
Rex was part of the original toy. You had the Red Rex, and then you had that brown juvenile one, I believe.
dude. Okay, if they did a Red Rex rubber re-release, that would be easy money for them, I believe. Like for real,
Hmm.
though. but
For sure, for
but
sure.
also you're talking about the toy lines. I mean, even currently with Mattel, they got the Hammond collection that has been coming out for the past like seven
Yeah,
months,
yeah.
and some
That
of
that would
those
be
toys
something
are
really cool.
amazing. Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
like I think
Even I, as a toy who am not a toy collector, even I'm like, man, I'm tempted to kind of buy that toy, like that Ray Arnold one with the laboratory. I was like, that's actually pretty cool.
yep, yep, and dude, I will be 100% honest. I have never been a huge toy collector until 2020, and I was really bored. Right, and I'm not a huge toy collector for a bunch of stuff, only specific things that I really really like. And so when the Hammond collection came out, I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. And so I do have some Hammond collection stuff like the Parasaurolophus because that's my favorite dinosaur. The Velociraptor, a Baryonyx, and actually no, that's it. Darn it!
well,
I at
well,
one point, yeah,
what I love about those Hammond collection toys, what I admire is that how specific in terms of detail they are.
yes,
Because I know that there was a Rexy in her regular brown color that we see during the day, but then they released one with her with Gennaro, and she had a darker hue to her because obviously it takes place at night. And I'm like, that's a detail they did not need to put in, but they did, and I
yep.
thought that was really really cool.
Oh, dude, that was amazing. I was tempted to get that, but I was just like, I really don't need to spend the extra
Yeah.
money.
So, but that's what I was getting to earlier. If they could do that, but do it for the mainstream toy lines, I think that would be a good way to celebrate the 30th anniversary for sure.
Oh, I completely agree. And actually, they're kind of doing that right now with the legacy toys. I think that you're right. They need to do that specifically for Jurassic Park because right now one of the hottest toys that got released recently was, excuse me, Sarah Harding with a an adult and a juvenile holy crap, I was about to say Stegoceratops, forgive me. Stegosaurus. Wow.
Right.
And then there's also another one with Roland Tembo in one of the InGen Jeeps.
Hmm.
Going after a Pachycephalosaurus. So those were two cool ones. But can you imagine if they had a legacy collection visitor center, right?
Oh wow. That would be so. Heck, I would probably buy that. Like
Dude, it's no question. I would buy it 100%.
it wouldn't even need to come with figures, just the visitor center. I'm buying it. So
Absolutely. But of course, like knowing Mattel, like they wouldn't do it without figures. So then they would throw in like I think it would be awesome if they threw in if it was like a $200 set, which is really steep. So it'd probably have to be closer to like 140, 160
a
in order for
Henry
me to
Wu
actually buy it.
figure, I think, would go good with that one.
Oh, dude. Oh man, that would sell it, man. So
A
like yeah,
'93 Henry Wu would be really cool.
lab coat and everything, and then
Hmm.
throw in one Velociraptor, and then what's his name, Timmy and Lex, and then like you can have the extra characters because like right now Grant and Ellie are both Hammond collection characters, and also I
Hmm.
no though they haven't had legacy releases of those yet, but either way, like dude, that would sell so well,
And yeah, definitely for sure.
and so
And I
I'm
know this is
yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I would say, and in terms of other things they can do, and this is a pretty obvious one, but just re-release the original film in theaters because
Oh
every
yeah,
time they do that, that movie is a success, which I think shows the staying power and impact of the original Jurassic Park. Because I believe it's been re-released four times now since its original release in '93, and every single time it's been released, it was number one at the box office, which I think is just telling of how impactful the first Jurassic Park was. So to do that for the 30th anniversary, release in like IMAX or IMAX 3D, I think that would be really, really a cool way to celebrate the 30th anniversary
I agree.
and
I agree.
just push its $1 billion gross a little bit more. So
Just a little bit. Yeah, I mean, like honestly, yeah, definitely a little bit compared to what it did when it first released. But I mean, yeah, honestly, I'm thinking about these things with you right now makes me excited again for Jurassic Park. But but like overall, the 30th anniversary without a movie release and without a even like a theme park ride release, because even though some people like during 20 uh during 2021 when the Velocicoaster opened for the first time, like even some people didn't even go to the park that year, but they just saw the videos online and it was super exciting, even just seeing something new happen like big like that. um
Yeah.
this year it doesn't seem like we have anything going on like that, and it just seems that these toys that you're talking about would be really cool. A re-release in theaters would be really cool. Like a new special edition of the Jurassic franchise, or even the original Jurassic Park, with just a really cool special edition release for 4K Blu-ray or regular Blu-ray would be amazing. But
Hmm.
I think ultimately, and this will segue into our third question, our last question here. There's something about the state of Jurassic that just kind of makes me feel like I really like the franchise. I really am a huge Jurassic Park fan, but I feel something like
It
like
just feels off. That's the best way I can put it. Something just
yes,
feels off.
like culturally, it seems like people are moving on, and then like I
Yeah.
feel like I need to be moving on as well. You know?
Well, I think a good example of that was the trailer for this new dinosaur movie coming out 65. All
Oh
the
yeah.
comments I saw about were finally a dinosaur movie that's not Jurassic. Finally, something dinosaur people in general can look forward to that's not Jurassic. I think that that's telling that I think people, quite frankly, are a little done or tired of it, if you know what I mean.
I do, and it's interesting to see that too, because just a year ago, 2022, January 2022,
The
people were
hype was
talking
through the
about
roof. Like,
100%, and people were talking about how Jurassic can become the next Star Wars for Universal. Not I said not the next Star Wars, but a Star Wars type of franchise for Universal. I personally was like, "Yo, pump the brakes." I don't think it's ever going to be that. But I also was thinking, like, what if this could become a tentpole franchise like Fast and Furious? I mean, I know that Fast and Furious has its multitude of flaws, but it is
mhm.
a tentpole franchise for Universal. They put it out and they know they're going to make money, right?
Oh yeah.
Um,
But and something we have to also keep in mind, going back to if you want this to be a tentpole franchise, each Jurassic World movie has made significantly less than the last. People say it's not a huge gap, but like 300 to 400 million between each movie, that's a pretty significant downgrade. I mean,
yeah,
yes, they all grossed a billion, but the downward trajectory, it whether you want to admit it or not, it does show a declining interest in each respected movie, and the fact that I think most people like Jurassic World, but the next two are pretty subpar. That doesn't help either. So,
no, no, not at all. And so I think
because in order
just
for something to be a tentpole franchise, it has to be sustainable over a long period. And frankly, I'm just not sure Jurassic can be that. Which is why I was saying I don't know if they can go forward anymore. Because how long can you keep this premise interesting and sustain interest for this long if you keep going with the same level of quality?
you know what? I agree. That specific statement that you just made, um, like, is something that's crossed my mind, but uh, never really felt had much weight in my mind until right now with the current state of Jurassic post Dominion. And so I think that leads us perfectly into our third question. What's it going to take for for Jurassic Park to become a top franchise again, or can it even become a top franchise again? And specifically based upon your question there, sorry, your comment that you just made about like how can you continue to make this premise interesting? I think that there are certain projects, and I agree with you. It's not forward; it is in its history. There are a
Hmm.
few more projects that could be made into either series for streaming or into full blown cinematic releases. But I honestly I agree with you that it's really hard to envision Jurassic becoming a an evergreen franchise where like Star Wars or Marvel, you can keep making you can just keep on going to different portions of its universe in order to pull interesting concepts. Whereas with Jurassic, it like specifically, I feel like you dilute the importance of the original film every time that you make a subpar thing. Uh,
Exactly.
and and then how many times can you do that before the franchise implodes on itself?
Hmm.
Um, but with that being said, there is a lot of success that can still be happening. And so, but you go ahead and because I could feel like you had something to say right there.
Well, I think that's a good point. You're going to dilute the brand because I know we live in this age where, especially people who liked him, and you're like, I want another one right now, and I'm like, Jurassic is not Marvel. It is not a conveyor belt machine. Jurassic, in many ways, kind of like Star Wars. I think is that franchise that is significantly popular and it works for a short period of time, and then it needs to go away again for a while. It
Mm,
really does. It is not something that just can keep continuing on. I know that many fans don't want to hear that, but I think that in the long run, if you want it to be sustainable, you need to give it a rest and see what worked and didn't work with the last attempt and figure out how to go forward in a new direction. Hence why I was saying I think that we should go in a post Trevorrow direction with somebody new to take whether it's forward or backwards. They need to find a way to take a rest, and that way, if you take a rest, you can see what worked and didn't work when you're planning the course for the future.
that's a good point to make. And when you put it that way, it does make me agree with you a little bit more that Colin Trevorrow can't continue to be a part of the series, and that hurts me to say because Jurassic Park is obviously my favorite movie from the franchise. It's also my favorite movie of all time. But my second favorite movie from the franchise is Jurassic World. Trevorrow is the one that gets credit for that movie, being the director and having a huge influence on the writing. But the proof is in the pudding. And if you're asking me, like, out of three movies, what's he batting? Yeah, I think he batted 1 for 3. You know, like,
Maybe one
um,
and a half if you count Battle at Big Rock, but
well, yeah, okay. Battle at Big Rock was really good, but I think that there is a huge difference between, yeah, like a short film release and a full blown theatrical release. And so with that,
because I've said this before. I think streaming should be the future of Jurassic because I just don't see a future where, as I was saying before, the downward trajectory of the box office where this can be sustainable. I think future films are going to continue to grow less and less. If you made another Jurassic movie right now in like 2 to 3 years after Dominion, I guarantee you wouldn't make a billion. Going off of Dominion, I don't think it would have.
I agree. I agree, and very sad for me to hear, but reality slaps, and so
Yeah. So I think streaming, if you're going to go back and do those in between movies or series, I think streaming would be good for Jurassic. For one, the budgets would be significantly less, and some people may think, well, why is that a good thing? Because I think the limitations help. Because when you have this huge budget, you get something that's big and extravagant and silly and quite frankly ridiculous, like Dominion. So I think that a smaller budget puts limitations and therefore forces you to be more creative and possibly even more, dare I say, as I was saying earlier, horror esque, because horror typically works with lower budgets.
because with horror you're basing more of your fear off of the unknown and things that you can't see more than these things that are just like right there in front of you. And so I agree with you to a point that yes, like the horror aspect would work it with lower budget, but for Jurassic Park also, I am saying Park specifically rather than World because like we talked
Mm-hmm.
about earlier, you have to go backwards in order to really dig out as much return financially as you want. Um,
Because there's so much lore to explore. I really feel the
yes,
need to emphasize that there's so much that could be explored in the time span between even before Jurassic Park and I would say before Jurassic World. There's so much there to explore that I think as a fan I would really like to see.
100%. Because I mean, and just quickly to touch upon that, like it's really in that idea of this industrial human aesthetic of when they were making the park or when they were exploring the island of Site B with its ruined human places whether it was the worker village or whether it was the InGen genetics lab from JP3, like seeing like how nature overcomes human industrial complex is really a core part of what made JP3's aesthetic so cool, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. But then from Jurassic World and on, Jurassic World gets a little bit of a pass because it is kind of that controlled environment. It was really cool to see the park open. It was really cool to see that.
The aesthetic of that film was supposed to reflect shiny and bright and new
Yes,
compared to the ruin-esque tone of The Lost World and JP3. So Jurassic World needed that for sure, and it worked. It
and it
worked.
worked. But then they Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom tried to have a little bit of the ruin stuff, but I feel like it just didn't go deep enough. That's also because they tried to pack way too much story into one movie. Um,
Right.
but so we didn't get to have enough time to spend on the island seeing all the ruined areas. But then Dominion is just back to, just kind of feels like just Hollywood blockbuster schlock, in the sense of like, hey, there's
Mm-hmm.
this shiny thing over here. Hey, you like technology? There's technology. Hey, there's this thing over here. And but I mean, once again, I can't just poop on Dominion the entire time. But when it comes to going backwards to Jurassic Park and doing streaming there, you still need to have a little bit of a budget though, because if you're
Mm-hmm.
because you at some point, and this is my opinion, you might disagree, you need to show the dinosaurs in their entirety at some point. Because
Yeah.
like obviously some of the greatest parts of JP1 is when literally you never see the velociraptors in their entirety until like the last quarter of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but and
Well,
most of the
and
time
I
you just
think
know that
that's
they're dangerous just because of what how people
yeah.
talk about them.
Mhm. Well, I think that's a good point, and I think again, if we're going to go back to the tone of the original three films, specifically the two Spielberg films, you need to do that because I always go back to the Lost World. I think that film did a good job of balancing. You see the Rex, but only for a short period of time. Like there's very few shots where in that movie we see the entirety of both of the adult Rexes, which I think is really cool.
Absolutely.
If we like for in the trailer attack, for example, when we first see them, we only really see their heads on the window. If we saw them, if it was like a far away perspective where they're further away and we saw their entire body, I don't think it would have been as effective.
I
So
agree.
it's all about when it is appropriate to show the full body dinosaur and when it isn't. It's about what you
Absolutely.
want to convey in that particular scene with the dinosaurs.
And that's up to the director for framing. Absolutely, the
Mm-hmm.
director is going to be able to really push forward that vision and feeling of the audience member of, okay, if I want them to feel peril, I need to really show them how small they are in lieu of this giant dinosaur in front of them, and giving them only a partial view of that. So then, like a lot of the rest of the dinosaur is up to imagination is really really important. I completely agree. Um, but
Plus, another thing is, and this is pretty obvious, but if we're going to go back, give us more animatronics because thinking about
oh
the
yeah,
trailer tag just got me thinking about it. But make them good animatronics because again, I don't want to. I'm like you. I don't want to hate on Dominion all the time, but the animatronics in that film were pretty robotic. You know, they didn't really convey a lot of life. And so if we're going to bring up animatronics back, let's sort of like with how we convey them fully with the CGI, let's make sure that we're doing it appropriately.
I agree with that too. I do believe, and you know what, I'm gonna go back to agree. Now even giving you another check mark of why Trevorrow should not be in creative control, because I specifically the one thing that I'm thinking about in Dominion when it came to its animatronics was when the Giganotosaurus swings its head in and breaks the window of that outpost in the end of the movie. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that felt extremely robotic when the Giganotosaurus is rolling around in there. However, I do believe that they probably had some of the most advanced animatronics for film ever created, but there are just some things that are so obvious that it's a robot. And
I'm
one
not
thing,
sure, and I'm not even necessarily sure if it was the animatronics themselves or just the lighting or the speed, but they didn't convey the same level of. natural movement or believability that something like the Rexes from The Lost World did. I'm not entirely sure what it was, so
Well,
it's
I
very
think it's
bizarre.
I think it's framing. I'm not 100, like you
Yeah,
said, I'm not 100% sure, but I honestly think it's framing because think back to the original JP for a moment. This was back in the early 90s when like first of all, when it comes to special
CGI was
effects,
still in its infancy.
yeah, Jurassic Park literally drove CGI into the next generation of filmmaking. So that's
Right.
amazing. But when it comes to animatronics, though, like it was still, I don't know if primitive is the right word, but it was still early on before we could have like some really very detailed hydraulics and animatronics when it came to stuff. However, the whole scene where where the Tyrannosaurus is just like scoping out the explorer that Tim and Lex are in
Hmm.
in the escape scene. Like every time that you see the animatronic, there almost there's one time particularly that I was like, oh, and it's even made clear in the Blu-ray version where the head rocks back and forth a little bit, and you're like, okay, I can see the tremor of the animatronics, but it's framed in so many different moments by Spielberg in order to make it look like this is the most real animal I've ever seen in my entire life because
It
of
really is.
how it's framed, because of how it's like the direction of the camera and how much is actually being shown at once. I completely agree with you. Like, I don't think that Trevorrow is the right guy because he should have been able to pick up on that. He should have been able to pick up on these moments
Mhm.
where you can't have a wide shot showing like the entirety of the Jigga's head when it's swinging in. You've got to really pan in and then make it take up like 80% of the screen when it's coming through
Mhm.
because then people are gonna just be noticing, holy crap, there's a bunch of teeth in my face, rather than, oh, there's a head that's kind of swinging over there in the distance,
Well,
you know?
and I think that going back to what we were saying about horror esque, doing being able to convey and frame the animatronics appropriately will help bring out more of that horror vibe that I think a lot of older fans want because your 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 shots are closer in, everything's more cramped, and I think that if Jurassic history has taught us anything, there's something just naturally more scary, I think, about the animatronic dinosaurs than the CGI ones
Oh
because
yeah.
they're really there. It's physically there, and it's conveying a scary amount of very detailed movement and emotion. So I think there's just something naturally scarier about an animatronic dinosaur than a CGI one.
Absolutely. And the actors are actually responding to a real thing in front of them rather than having to imagine something in their head and then try to be afraid of that. They're actually responding to something right there in front of their face. It's just more beneficial all the way around. And so I agree with you. If they do more stuff, then animatronics would be a huge asset to their team, but or to their lineup. But with a limit, we only have a little bit of time left here, Noah. So I want to ask you just one pointed question here. If you could have one thing this year, 30th anniversary of the Jurassic Park movie, if you could have one thing and you could have anything that would make you happy and super pumped up for Jurassic franchise again, what would it be?
I'm gonna stick with what I said earlier. I really want to see a special edition release with a commentary track for the original film because I'm a nerd and I love listening to commentaries for movies. And if I got one for my favorite film of all time, that would just be the ultimate fan dream come true for me because the making of Jurassic Park books can tell you a lot of stuff, but when you hear it audibly from the people who actually worked on it, I think it makes a much bigger impact and a bigger difference.
I I agree with you, and I think that that would be really cool. That would be really cool, and I agree with the fact that the commentary does make a difference because you're hearing the passion of the people that made this movie that you care so much about. So that's a
Mhm.
really good one, and I like that. I hope that something like that would happen this year. For me, if I could have one thing, anything that happens this year, and may have it be somewhat realistic on the day, on the actual day of the anniversary. Was that's June 10th or 11th?
Uh, June 11th.
June 11th. On June 11th, if they had a trailer for a new streaming series on Peacock, whether it was either A, the Hammond series, the creation of Jurassic Park, or B, the cleanup of Nublar, or something to do with like the immediate aftermath of Jurassic Park.
Ooh.
And basically kind of like do a reimagined version of the Jurassic Park the game story, where it
Mm-hmm.
actually works with the franchise. Boom.
Yeah.
That would take me from 0 to 100 real quick on my excitement for Jurassic Park.
I'm completely with you there. I'm literally visualizing it in my head now. Like they play the opening track when the title is showing for Jurassic Park in the
Yes,
trailer, and I'm just like, oh, that would be so cool.
that
Like I'm already on the hype train, and it's not even a thing.
yeah, right. It might be the most like unrealistic thing ever, but like, dude, that would be so cool. But oh, dude, okay, Noah, I have to say this. Thank you. We're out of time for today, and we're wrapping up. But I want to say thank you so much for joining me today on our first podcast of the year, Juraffic Talk on Dino Park Media. And honestly, dude, you were batting 100 when it came to all these takes. I agreed with like so much of what you were saying. So it's been a pleasure to have you on. And before we go, I want people to find your content. Where can people find you, Noah, and the cinematic, fantastic stuff that you do?
Well, thank you, Sam, for having me. It's always a fun talking about this stuff. Even though I wasn't the biggest fan of Dominion, I love this franchise. I love the original film and the Lost World so much that nothing's going to take away from that or make me any less of a fan. And I really am hoping that, despite what I say, I really hope that the franchise does go off to bigger and better things. But as for where people can find me, basically, you can find me on Instagram, Cinematic Fantastic. I post, of course, about Jurassic occasionally, not as much as I used to, but I still do because it's still movies. And I just post about basically the franchises that I love, including Jurassic, and just pop culture and movies in general. I just enjoy talking about it. So if you want to find me, you can find me on there.
Awesome, dude. Yeah, your Instagram stuff is a lot of fun, especially when you're like talking about your favorite stuff from different franchises. The Incredibles, like being your favorite Pixar film, for example, and like,
Oh gosh, The Incredibles is such an amazing movie.
so good. It's so good.
I could talk about that all day. Like,
yeah, you know what? You should create a podcast. But dude, thank you so much for coming on, though. And guys, follow Cinematic Fantastic on Instagram. It's Noah's such a great guy. And before we go, once again, happy 30th anniversary to Jurassic Park this year. And before we go, as always, thank you for joining us, and know you are loved.